Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Esports Today, a podcast mini-series brought to you by the lovely people at Ross Video. I mean, look at this set. It's amazing, and they made this happen, so I'm glad to have them on board alongside us, Esports Insider. In this interview in particular, we're going to be talking to Ashley Washington, who's the product lead of Riot's Game Changers initiative. We're going to be talking about, simply, Game Changers itself, why Game Changers has developed from what it was when it was birthed like 3 years ago, and also the initiatives that it has sparked and the growing trend of female gamers and women gamers who have kind of entered the scene or are feeling more empowered going into the scene. It's a great conversation with Ashley. I really loved sitting down and chatting with her. And so without further ado, let's jump into it. Ashley, it's a pleasure to be speaking to you all the things about Valorant Game Changers. I guess to start off, I actually want to go back to when Game Changers first started. I remember, reading, I might have written the PR, not the PR, I'd written the article about it at the point, and it said that the point of Game Changers is to eventually not have a Game Changers in the ecosystem, in the sense of that at the point it will be where Game Changers are needed because women and men can just be in the competitive environment together, all happy and, the dream, essentially, I want to, given how Game Changers has progressed and has grown, I do want to start. Has that changed a little bit in the shift of perception about that?
I think that that's kind of a multi-part question, and it has a multi-part answer. So I would say that the North Star is definitely moving towards a place where we need Game Changers anymore. But it's just that, it's a North Star. It's going to take time. And I feel like ultimately, in order to get us there, we have to be creating a setup where we're reliably sending women through the system and ideally out into the rest of the ecosystem. So in EMEA, the main focus for me has been, how do we create that pipeline? So how do we get women interested in coming in, and how do we make sure that they're getting good and finding their way out of it? And then now that I believe we have found that in some ways, it's about doing this reliably and replicably to make sure that this is something that does the job it needs to do to get us to that North Star. So in terms of perception, I think the perception has absolutely changed, because what we've been able to do is also highlight the fact that there are plenty of women interested in being in this space, and they are here and they are playing. That now it's about which women are going to be likeliest to find their way out? Like, who's playing? Who's good? Who's cool? I think now we're close to a point of at least normalization of the women's scene. But obviously we need to move towards normalization in the general scene. So this perceptive shift on the product level has been very much about that. But I would say outwardly, I would imagine that the public view of the program is also moving in a similar way.
I think when I look at the bad side of esports, sometimes I do turn to the likes of Reddit and social media forums and stuff. And I think just from what I've seen, the likes of G2 Gozen and all of those women's scenes, when I actually see announcements like that on social media now, it's not met with negativity. It's met with positivity and optimism and excitement. Do you think that's something that Game Changers has kind of helped cultivate since it launched?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the kind of person who would like to think that a lot of the success of Game Changers actually comes from the resilience and willpower from the players and the orgs that are willing to support them. So I find it very hard to take credit for that. But I would say that being able to hold space for the platform that Game Changers creates, I believe, has been relatively integral to facilitating that kind of visibility and that kind of attention that they're able to get. Because, I mean, if you look at a team like G2, they were undefeated for the first few years of the program. And so, for people inside Game Changers, they have this very high awareness of G2 because they look up to them. But then for people on the outside, it's like, oh wow, there's this team that never loses, not even a map. And I think that's really worked well for them. We've been able to showcase that. And I think that's what Game Changers does. It showcases this. And then the rest is honestly really up to the players and those teams. But the space is there. And I think that's what we do best as Game Changers.
Do you think that Game Changers somewhat benefited from the fact that when Valorant came out, it felt like it was the first major esport, in my opinion, that kind of took this shift as, oh, we're actually going to make it just inherently inclusive and diverse for everybody. We're actually going to we're actually going to put more of an effort into creating more of a diverse, representation with the player base and actually encourage people. And the launch of Game Changers was very quickly after that. Do you think that has helped the Valorant scene, the fact that it was easy to get to that source and create these initiatives basically from day dot?
I feel like there are probably lots of different ways you can answer that depending on who you are at Riot. I would say I personally think that the fact that Valorant itself is a very colorful game that features a variety of different types of agents in a variety of different types of settings. It sounds very simple, but for people who are accustomed to feeling underrepresented, this already means a lot. And I think that the game itself was really the catalyst for this, to have a game that kind of sits in the area, in the FPS area, and says, hey, this could be interesting for anyone, It doesn't give like an immediately Bowie vibe or anything like that. Probably did a lot for it, to be honest.
Do you think it kind of just shows the growing perception in gaming as well now? There is a lot more of this inclusive feel with it when it comes to the gaming industry as a whole.
No, I mean, it's an interesting question. I feel like working in esports, I have like so much distance from like game development in general. But as a gamer, who's also a woman, who is also, a Black woman, and I'm used to not being seen a lot in games. When I am seen in games, when I can relate to the game, it feels a lot better. And I can definitely say that feeling is more common now than it was when I first started playing games. Like a lot better. So I would say for sure, I think that this is something that is getting more attention than it used to.
I want to talk about Game Changers then from a competitive standpoint, the bread and butter of Game Changers, the one that everybody's excited about. You had the LAN event in Berlin last year for Game Changers for the World Championships, and now you're going to Brazil this year for it.
Yeah.
How exciting is it to have LAN opportunities now for a completely women-only esports event?
It's great. It's not only exciting to have the LAN, it is integral to the success of Game Changers because it doesn't matter how many women are playing. If you don't see them, how is anybody going to know that they're great and they're worth taking on to these other rosters, right? So I think LANs are an amazing opportunity to make sure that's happening. And the World Championship is obviously a very shiny diamond of a LAN for those who have found their way to the top of their regions in Game Changers. So I'm very passionate about us being able to have experiences like the World Championship, and I hope we have more in the future.
Is there anything that you've learned from the LAN event in Berlin which you're going to put in towards the one in Brazil? Because I think one that I realized looking at social discourse a little bit was I guess this is a good criticism, but the venues, people were actually wanting bigger venues and more tickets and more people wanted to attend these events. Is this something that you've kind of took on board for the future LAN events, just seeing how many people actually want to see these events live?
Well, so to be fair, I'm not usually the one who works on the events directly. I'm very much more scope for the tournament proper in EMEA, but I fully believe that the feedback that we've seen, both positive and negative, is something that the team responsible for the events has taken on. And I mean, when you think about it, even though Game Changers is entering its 4th year, we're only moving into our 2nd LAN. In the same way we had to learn more about Game Changers, the tournament over time, I think we will learn about the LAN experience, and we will continue to make it even better than it already is. Because I think at the end of the day, there's a lot to be said about the nature of the tournament when it's done in person. But I was there last year. I won't be there this year, unfortunately. I was there last year. The atmosphere was impeccable. There's nothing like it. And I want more of it. I don't want the World Championship to be the only thing. So I think something probably everybody can get on board with is that we probably need more of these experiences, these nice major LANs. And I have my eye towards this, and hopefully maybe even be able to deliver that for EMEA. But On the topic of the global LAN, I feel like this is probably something that a lot of that team is thinking about, and I fully expect it to continue to evolve over time.
As a final question, obviously this is Esports Today, the little podcast interview set we've got, brought by Ross Video, who are a events production company who literally this wouldn't be possible without them. They've done a lot of the production and a lot of the equipment which is provided for them. So I wanted to play on that a little bit and give them a little bit of a shine as a sponsor for this. How would you define esports in today's day and age then?
That's a really good question that I probably don't think about very often. I would have to say, though, that esports in general is a hyper unique opportunity for us to move forward in so many areas as people that I think we're really beginning to tap into. And obviously, from the D&I context, I have a bit of a bias there. But when you look at even just like popular media, movies, just basic game development, the stories that we tell as a society, a lot of this is beginning to evolve to be more representative. And I think what's interesting about esports, different from like regular sports, for example, is that there's so much potential for people to get engaged no matter where they're from or who they are or, you know, what they're dealing with. And I think in many ways, the platform that is created by esports, regardless of title, is really special in that we have an opportunity to leave our mark in this area. So I think for me, especially when I have the opportunity to engage at events, I'm always having an eye towards how can we do even better? How can we go even further? And I feel like this kind of just this blank canvas of games people love to play and be super passionate about, with a bunch of people who are super intelligent, have great ideas about how we can make this space even more dynamic, more interesting, and more engaging. Because at the end of the day, this is a very accessible area, but visibility varies depending on where you are. Access varies depending on where you are. And the better that this gets, the more that we improve that, the more people we will see represented in this space. And I think honestly, I think we can only benefit from being able to engage with so many different types of people on a topic that we're all super excited about. So I really, really love esports. I can't say I'm good at any of the games in the space. But I think one thing I can agree on along with everybody else, no matter how good or bad I am, is that it's just so dang cool. It really is. So for me, this is honestly, at least this is what esports is meaning for me at the moment. Oh no. Who knows though? Maybe next year is something else.
Ashley, it's an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Good luck with everything in Game Changers and EMEA and and the Game Changers ecosystem as a whole. So
Thank you.